Hey everyone, uh, Chomsky here. Just want to talk about potential pairings with Titus as we get closer and closer to the end of this fragment fusion type dealy. Just want to go over about potential pairings that we could have with him for some content. Um, Actually, let me go back and let me. I don't have them yet. I am going for them, so I'm kind of geeked to get them. Um, Reason being is I love these double mechanics, so we'll get there. Um, Dude's A1 is pretty neat. Uh, Thing is that he needs a shield, so I'm going to get to that in a moment. But yeah, 40% chance goes up to 60 of placing a block active skills. Like that's pretty awesome. Thinking about PvP, Chimera, like that's pretty big. And then whenever there is an ally counterattacking or anything like that, also has a 40% chance to place the block active skill debuff for 2 turns on the enemy that they're going to be attacking. So potentially there's 2 people on the opposite team that's going to have block active skills zonked. Like that's pretty nutty. And yeah, 60%, okay, whatever. But that's still pretty good. It's a coin flip. Like that's solid, you know. This is where I get really intrigued. If an A2 goes down to a 3 turn cooldown. Um, Attacks one enemy. Big whoop. The attack is always critical if this guy is under a shield buff. You also get the damage boost equal to the value of the shield. This is why a lot of the content creators are going nuts over Brogni and Wixwell with them, because they could increase their shield damage, which will only help this out that much more. Additionally, if this dude is killing someone, he removes all debuffs. If the target survives, places a provoke on everybody and all the enemies for 1 turn. Cannot be resisted if he's under a shield buff. So the reason why this is big is you don't need to bring a provoker or get provoke staff uh, for Hydra. So he could be pivotal for your teams in there. Provoke, it's pretty solid because you know you could get you could work on some combinations there. The 8-3 placing an ally protect, increase attack, blah blah blah, increase speed on a single ally for 2 turns, but also fills that turn meter by 40%. That's a lot of percent, man. To basically like 4/10 of a turn meter boost, that is huge. Instantly activates the skill at the end of an ally's turn when that ally has no buffs and their HP is less than 100%. Okay, like not having buffs, I'm guilty of it. My team composition, I'm not really that team buff heavy, so like this can come in handy, um, especially after if it gets stripped or whatever. Each time an ally is hit, Each time an ally hits an ally, each time an enemy, geez, hits an ally, that ally's next attack will deal 10% more damage for each hit they take. So those triple hitting A1s, I mean, like that's another 30% more damage that ally is going to be mustering out there. That's pretty big. Um, yeah, it resets, but that's just an instant like boost. So as we see with other content creators on YouTube, um, this can do a lot of damage. So then who were we pairing him up with? Luckily, I did some prep work. And these are the teams that I was thinking about. So let's go from the bottom here. Miscreate a Monster. Uh, it's a rough one, honestly. Um, Thinking about early game, champions that you can eat not easily, but you can obtain, right? So he comes out, you know, and I think it's this one. Yeah, place a shield buff on all allies for 3 turns. All right, it's gonna be a tiny shield, like legit tiny, because it's only a quarter of the damage inflicted. But at least it's a shield that we could utilize. And once we get Titus, yeah, man, I mean, it's still something, but I would imagine if you don't have Wixwell, if you don't have Brogni, then then you could use that tiny shield and help them out. Um, I it's there, So what is it? The reason why Wixwell is so huge here, and that I will eventually build out, is he's increasing the shields on all allies. It's it's proportional to the number of buffs which had their duration increased. So this can get pretty big. If you crank out like continuous heals and that gets bumped, um, like there you go, man. Thinking about a Wither, thinking about Pardon, thinking about another guy that we have here of Woozgar. Um, Anything that gets bumped, those shields get bumped up, and that's a massive hit that Titus could use. But we're not going to focus so much on Wixwell or Brogni because maybe people don't have them. So then, let's get remotely good here. Karkath, it's one of those where it's like technically, yes, we will all get him because he's a Doom Tower champ. Reasonably, no one's going to be using him in a lot of stuff because he's very clumsy, or she's very clumsy. Yeah, you get a strengthen and a shield. Okay, cool. Like, but that's really the only thing that you're bringing her in. Um, I mean, like, this is still something, but her A1 is okay. Her A2, like, you're placing a revive on death on her. Like, that's it. Just technically, she can be used, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't go to 60, but I already did. So, whatever. I love Woozgar. I've talked about Woozgar a few times in my streams on Twitch. That's a shameless self promotion there. Um, Woozgar's pretty neat. Um, you're going to crank out, he's an HP champ, Ogre and Tribe. Uh, you're going to crank out the shield, and a reflect damage. And then it's based on 20% of his uh, HP. He's already an HP champ, so you're really aiming for that 80,000 to 100 plus thousand. A 20,000 plus shield, awesome. Sustainability, you know, like you're gonna speed tune your teams with Titus, and ideally you'd want Woozgar or others to get cranked out ahead of him, so this way at least that shield's out there. Alternatively, if that shield isn't there, like you at least want those fast champs and a 3-turn cooldown. That's pretty snazzy. Taragi's another one. A lot of people use him in Clan Boss, so there's a lot of synergy there. You could also use Taragi and Hydra. So Taragi and Titus do make sense. Again, 15% shield. You know, that's pretty sweet. Again, he's an epic, and we're basically getting um, you get more chances to get Taragi because you're pulling them out of Ancients and Sacreds than you would with others that are on this list. But it's not bad. You know, if you're already using Taragi and Hydra or even Clan Boss, like I think bringing Titus in there, I think that's going to be a solid damage dealing boost right there. So it's not that bad. Taugor is the next one. You know, um, places a shield. Like the only reason why I have him on here is because we want to revive her for Hydra, right? And if you don't have some of the biggies, like dude is very decent. You know, we always need revivers. And especially as an orc, you know, there's also that element there too. So increased speed, heals, but very tiny shield. You know, it's 20% of his thing. And you're really going to crank him out with defense and HP, just sustainability. Like you don't need accuracy. So it could be kind of good, but it's a stretch. Um, it's all right, you know. Um, Here I put in Dune Lord, and I know he's a Unity champ for barbarians, but it's still something. He's placing a shield 20% of his max HP. That's fine. Um, it's he's also increasing the the buffs, and I think that that's pretty good. Um, it gets kind of like, it's fine, but it's really, we want to extend all the buffs that we can get. It just we want to have that continuously bang on us. So I mean, there's that element, and you'll see that with Emic as well. It's just good. The Unity doesn't apply to them, but I'm just thinking of champs that could work with them. I'm not bringing Dune Lord into Hydra whatsoever or Clan Boss. Maybe around, you know, Doom Tower, maybe along with Curse City, but in PvP content, ugh, that's a stretch. Use them if you got them, but I'm not aiming for them. We have Emic, and I know Emic was around that you could potentially get. Uh, I don't really use them so much, so please correct me on this. But really using the A2, it's 30% of his max HP. He's HP based, so that's going to be a big shield. And he's decreasing the cooldown of all ally skills. That's pretty gnarly. Um, Again, we just want to get that rotation around where he always has that shield up. So this way around that A2, he could smack a Roo. I think that's really good. Um, Again, just sustainability, and I would use him in Hydra. If I have him, I would use him, and that's fireworks. And I'm pretty sure I just jumped. um, Again, like just talking about shields. Here's Lana Therrell, um, busting out the shields, max HP. You know, it's it's fine. You can use them in Hydra. Have them with a provoke set as well, or even a hex set because of the AOE. Um, as well as like there's that synergy with Titus with the teaming up. I Again, I think it's solid. You know, um, he's useful. So in Hydra, he would get there, but maybe not in Clan Boss because the AOE stuff doesn't really matter. Mithrala, uh, it goes without saying about how badass Mithrala is. So if you have her, you already know that you're going to be bringing her in Hydra, Doom Tower, um, Curse City. If you need it, campaign, like you're going to be bringing her everywhere for the most part as you're progressing throughout the game. The Hex is really awesome, especially with Titus. Just again, increasing defense is pretty big, and that's only going to help him out because he's defense based. As well as that Hex, you put that out there, you have him, you have Titus go nuts on an infinity friendly Hydra head, and then it's only going to transcend. And plus she puts out a strengthen and a shield to 30% of her max HP. That's that's a lot right there. Uh, Next one was Helicath. If you have Helicath, I still use mine in Iron Twins, and the shield may not be as great as the HP based shields, but you're still busting out a pretty sizable, formidable shield, and because it's based on Helicath's defense. And what do I have? I have, what is that, 7,000 defense. It's a pretty big shield. So it's pretty solid. Um, Again, you get some block damage element here. Uh, you would need a lot of resistance if you're going to bring Helicath into Hydra, but in Clan Boss, he's fine. Um, that's okay. Saint Nick busts out a shield. You know, that's really it. The unkillable, continuous heal. You know, that's fine. Um, he's okay. He's not going to be doing a buku amount of damage, but really it's just, you know, he's fine. He's void, so at least there's no weak hits. But having a shield based on damage inflicted, eek, eek. Um, I have high shield because I know that he was part of some people's like login stuff. He's okay. Like honestly, very mid. Um, serves a purpose. He's putting out strength in. That shield is fine. Goes to a 3 turn cooldown, so like that's okay. Gets a provoke out there too, and decrease attack, so that's not bad, you know. And then you know it's pretty neat. Like I don't mind high shield. I used him for a bit in Hydra a long time ago. Haven't used them since, just because I got other champs. Next up, we got Mikage. Mikage is kind of a fun one to use with Titus, just because that whole ally attack there. Additionally, the A1, placing a shield equal to 10%, which is going to be really, really tiny, and the ally with the lowest HP. Okay, so when we think about synergy with teammates, if you're going to build Titus with very low HP, that's that's not the way that I would do it. Titus is putting out a provoke, so he's going to get hit. So you need to have that synergy of HP and defense. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe Titus is not going to have the most HP on a team, but it's still nice that this is an option since we all have the ability to get Mikage sometime uh, throughout our progression in the game. But I, I, I wouldn't necessarily build a team around a Mikage and Titus, um, just because that's a very small shield to use. Additionally, we could extend it, yada yada yada. But I mean, this is not exactly the best option, but it is an option. Speaking of not best options, we have Geralt. Geralt's rough because in Form One, there's some use out of this, right? Uh, having the ally protect even after provoking, and then placing an unkillable, like you go A2 into an A3, and that's pretty solid. There's a whole lot of sustainability there, and there's some fun times that you could have with Geralt and Hydra, but not necessarily in this form. Um, you're putting out their shield, which is great, but for any damage, you're going into Form 2, and then you're wasting a turn in Hydra by metamorphing and then metamorphing back, and we know that there's a cap, so that's the really sucky part, and then he'll join in on attacks, yada yada yada. But keeping him in this form kind of feels like a disservice. Like I want to have my Geralt in as much damage as I can. Right now I have him in protection, but it just feels kind of weird. So I wouldn't have him in there. But if you don't have another DPS option, this could be okay. Like we're not leaning into the provokes because Titus could provoke, so that's not needed. And then an A1 of increasing the cooldown, that can't affect Hydra heads. So you're really only using a shield buff. Okay, there's other workarounds, but it's okay. I wouldn't, again. I'm not promoting that. I do just want to toss that out there. Um, yeah, kind of like what I was talking about with Mikage. This is the rough one. Yeah, you're putting out there a shield. It's a very tiny shield, so you could have Lazurius go ahead of Titus, bust out that small shield, and then have Titus go, and that's okay. I enjoy my Lazurius a lot because the passive of the revive. So even if Titus falls down, I'm not wasting a turn or wasting a skill as long as he's in this form and potentially reviving. So I would pair him up just for general support, so I think that's kind of worthwhile. Um, I skipped over Brogni um, just because when we talk about gear sets, you know, Brogni Brogni satisfies a lot of stuff. He's putting out their shield to 30% of his HP, which is great. It's protected. So that's not going to go anywhere until until damage exceeds, that shield. So that's fine. Um, this one will extend it and empower it just a little bit. So it increases the value of shield buffs on all allies by 30% of the damage inflicted. We're not talking about a massive amount of damage. So this is just a small uptick. When I talk about small, maybe 1,000 to 2,000, like the way that I have my Brogni is not set up for damage. So it's fine. But he is somebody that I would bring in a Hydra. Um, you're you're getting a small, you know, cleanser. You're getting a small chance of HP burning. You're getting a reflect damage as long as there's a shield out there, in which honestly this is up at all times. So it's not bad. Um, I'm sorry, not up at all times. It's only 2 turns, so it's fine. But he's growing it, and there's that Titus mechanic of potentially growing that. Um, let's let's go back here because he's naked. So I did want to talk about gear sets here. You know, we all have the opportunity to get divine offense, divine critical rate, and divine speed. Yeah, that this is the time gate. Um, as long as you're doing your clan boss, as long as you're doing your arenas, because every week you get some chests, and these are in there. You'll get this. So there is a potential that you could build some stuff out of it. But dude, it is so hard. Like you're gonna get a self shield, which is fine in the beginning. So like that's great for PvP. But really, you just need to crank out as much damage as you can, and it's kind of hard to do that with those. So that, yeah, that just sucks. You know, um, really, that's what it is. Or what you can get is blood shield accessories, and like it's gonna give you 5% of damage dealt of a shield after attacking. So really, with Titus, you attack, get that small shield, and then hope that no one hits you. This is where you get your A2 going. Okay, I mean 5% of damage. That's not a lot in most cases. It can be if you have like a Toshiro going nuts or a Marius going nuts, but that's like the chances of you having like these awesome ridiculous stats on your blood shields, it's going to be very low. So it's not necessarily a high probability that you're going to have good stuff on it, but in case you do, great, awesome, slap it on. All you need is just one, and that'll be fine. But for the most part, I know with my Titus, I'm going to be aiming to get my Wixwell going with them. Um, I want those shields to grow, and it's a nice excuse to work on my Wixwell. So that'd be neat. I could see those two being buddies, and I'm excited to make that work. He's in Sacred Order, so like I'm excited to make that work. I just you know, I just hope that everyone else has the same amount of fun with Titus as possible. So yeah, that's just a few ideas there. Um, Thanks for making it this long. It's almost 25 minutes. Hope that provided some help. If it has, drop me a comment. Let me know. Drop a like. Lay it on me. Would love to hear from you. Until then, find me on Twitch, Noman my Chomsky, and let's have some fun. We're gonna get for those that are going for them, we're going to get them very shortly. So that's exciting. Um, until next time, take care.